C'est bon? Now I practice my Tuvalu throat singing. Non? OK. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue à cette deuxième journée du symposium sur l'immersion au niveau universitaire. As you may have heard yesterday, the symposium was organized to coincide with the 10th anniversary of French Immersion Studies. So thank you for coming to our little party. Hier, on a entendu parler du contexte canadien du français langue seconde. On a au pays des grands nombres d'étudiants qui étudient le français langue seconde, mais une attrition massive au niveau secondaire. Et cette attrition se répète dans la transition entre le secondaire et l'universitaire, que le taux de bilinguisme des jeunes entre 16 et 24 ans chute de façon considérable. Well, even here at the Bilingual University of Ottawa, where most of our courses are offered in both languages, in the early 2000s, roughly 3% of our Anglophone students who could study in French did so. And that was mostly in French second language classes. They were free to study anything in French, but most didn't. And when these students were surveyed as to why they didn't study in a language that they could understand, there were usually a couple of reasons. What if I don't understand everything? What if I don't get such good grades? Your performance is very important. I'm going to be losing my scholarship. So there was always an element of risk involved in studying in the other language. So the idea of studying in French at the university level seemed daunting because of the risks. You know, we can't waste our time, we can't waste our money, and we can't jeopardize our career. Donc, en 2004-2005, l'université développa et proposa un plan Vision 2010 où l'université assumait son identité bilingue et la mettait au marché et elle cherchait à profiter de sa dualité linguistique. Donc, on a créé une structure pour les étudiants. Plutôt que de dire « venez essayer quelques cours », on leur disait « venez en faire beaucoup ». Et pour une raison ou une autre, ça a collé cette idée. Le terme French Immersion, c'est quelque chose qu'ils connaissaient au secondaire, donc d'utiliser le même terme à l'université, c'était facile. Ils disaient « Oh, I know what that is ». Donc, c'est ce qui les intéressait, c'était le fait de pouvoir étudier un peu en français, pas nécessairement entièrement en français. And the offer of incentives and language support that was discussed a little bit yesterday, and you'll be hearing more about today, enticed a few at first. We had 240 students in our first year in 2006. But as we got out there and we started talking about French immersion at the University of Ottawa, it became more and more popular. Here are the programs that now offer French immersion. And this is something that gets the students. When we tell them you can do something like medieval studies or software engineering, they say, wow, je peux vraiment faire n'importe quoi de façon bilingue. So it really is something that hits home with the students and their parents. And Monsieur Laurier alluded to this yesterday, that there was a phenomenal growth. So you can see in our first year with our 247 students, and where we are now with last year we had 654 new students coming into the university. So the program itself is attractive. We have scholarships, and never discount how much the scholarships are attractive to the students. It really is a very big incentive. When we survey the students, the number one thing they say is, oh, the money, I love the money. So it certainly works more than we thought it would. But some of the other things that we do as well, I'll mention in a moment. So as words spread, parents and their students were curious about it, and then they became actually quite enthralled. I remember one young student who was shaking at a recruitment fair. She said, this is amazing. I had never considered University of Ottawa, but now, oh my God, you're number one. And I thought it was odd that she was shaking, tellement cette idée l'emballait. But we hear this from students now. You know, I know this because my older sister did it, or my neighbor's daughter did it, or, you know, a lot of my kids in high school do it. So it just seems normal. Donc cette idée de continuer en français langue seconde au niveau universitaire devient normale. Dans le contexte européen, le contact avec les autres langues est beaucoup plus fréquent de façon quotidienne, mais ici au Canada, il y a vraiment, nous sommes ensemble ici, francophones, puis nous sommes ensemble là-bas, anglophones, et cette idée de croisement nous fait peur. So we can see that recruitment happens across all faculties: arts, engineering, health sciences, science, social sciences, and the School of Management. The bars in green represent the faculty's overall English recruitment, and the little bars in blue represent the French immersion recruitment. Engineering is not impressive, 3 students and 8 students. We just started this 3 years ago. So we had 3, 8, I believe in 2016 we had 12 or 13 students. This year we're looking at about 20, so it's building slowly, but it is quite impressive. Mais comme le disait, en fait, ces étudiants sont très performants. We see that they have higher academic performance than their English-only peers. Their admission averages, 65% of French immersion students have over 85% compared to 53% for Anglophones. And once they're here on campus studying at the university level, their GPA of a B or higher is 73% for immersion students and 64% for the Anglophone students. So they are high-performing students. Our institutional research and planning department shows how the immersion students are scoring much higher than the Anglophone cohorts and the Francophone cohorts. So overall, attractive students to have here on campus. They are high-performing, they do very well. However, as Monsieur Laurier mentioned yesterday, the retention in French immersion is a problem. Nous voyons que lorsqu'on arrive à la 6e année, 76, 79, 76% des étudiants graduent de l'Université d'Ottawa, mais seulement 43, 38 et 38% graduent avec la mention immersion. So we lose a lot of students, many after the first year, the second year. Once the second year is done, things tend to stabilize a little bit, but there are a couple of reasons for this. And yes, I've planned it properly. So let's hear some of the reasons.
I got this textbook for my French class, okay? And I read on my virtual campus that I had to read chapter 3 before my class. I'm like, chapter 3, can't be that hard. I go through it, really, it's only a couple pages, it's not that long, so I figure I can do this. So I sit down with my book, and I try to start reading it. And I have never read anything at this level of French in my whole entire life. Like, it just wasn't making sense to me. I ended up having, like, my computer there, and I had my Google Translate, and, like, every time I came across a word that I didn't understand, and you'll see how many words I didn't understand, I circled them all. Can you see that? Well, anyways, there are a lot of circled words. So every time I didn't understand a word, I would look it up and find the English translation. But it turns out some of these words, I didn't even know what the English word meant. So then I had...
Des mots comme hégémonie, misogynie, they look it up. C'est quoi l'hégémonie? Hegemony. Like, I don't know what that is. And she has another part.
Not. So that whole class, I'm just freaking out in my head, and maybe that's why I didn't understand him for the last bit, because in my head I'm just freaking out, and I'm like, why am I here? What is going on? And then the teacher starts telling jokes, and everyone around me is laughing, and I'm just like, what did he say? But I can't ask anyone what he said, because everyone's speaking French. And then the teacher walks around, and he starts, like, asking people in the class questions, and I was like, oh my god, like, I really hope he doesn't ask me something because I don't even know what he's saying.
Welcome to the university life in French immersion. Donc, ce qu'on voit au fil des ans, c'est qu'il y a des étudiants qui ont vraiment ils ont fait le français langue seconde dans un contexte entièrement anglophone. They've learned French with other English kids, pretty much exclusively. They're lucky if their French teacher actually was a native French speaker. Often, the French teacher has French as a second language as well, in varying levels of proficiency. So the students come here, and they might not have the strongest proficiencies. Someone asked the question yesterday about DELF level B1 for admission. Yeah, a low B1 is a problem. We adjust for that, and we make course recommendations. A high B1 is almost a B2. They can succeed in a university context where most of what they do is sit, listen, and read. Ils ont aussi un facteur de motivation. Why are they here? Is it just for the bursary? Is it because mom and dad are still forcing them to be in French immersion? When we did a survey of students last summer, for most of them, et en fait, quelqu'un l'a mentionné hier, en fait, c'était M. Boileau, le français, c'est utilitaire plutôt qu'identitaire. And we're going to be hearing about that a little bit later. But love of language is not priority number one, so it's harder to kick yourself in the butt when you don't really love what you're doing here. And the third challenge is that the easier path is right there. The university experience, is very difficult in the first year, and when you're trying to cut things out, French is an obvious one because you can study entirely in English here. Donc, le fait de savoir qu'ils ont une porte de sortie, des fois, pousse certains étudiants à l'apprendre plus rapidement qu'on ne voudrait. Donc, on a vécu ce 10e anniversaire pour vivre une espèce de crise existentielle. Les premières années, on était sur le marché, puis on disait « Here we are, here we are ». Et maintenant, à 10 ans, on se dit « Who are we? What are we doing? Where are we going? » Donc, on est fiers du fait qu'on célèbre notre 1000e diplômé en immersion française au mois de mai, cette année, mois de juin, lors de la remise des diplômes. Mais malgré tout ça, on se pose des questions. Où agir? Donc, on voudrait agir dans les prochaines années sur les étudiants, évaluer, examiner leur niveau de compétence à l'entrée, ce qui est exigé des étudiants en termes de cours et d'actions concrètes dans leur progression, et travailler aussi leur contact avec la langue et la culture, pour pas que ce soit un contenant vide. Au niveau du cadre professoral en français langue seconde, il y a des choses qu'on veut faire avec nos professeurs qui accompagnent ces étudiants, et il y a aussi beaucoup de travail à faire avec les professeurs de discipline. Yesterday, we heard about team teaching and collaborative approaches. We're lucky if we have some of that in some of our courses. Often, it could be one part-time prof with another part-time prof, and then they, cross in the night, and then they might never teach with each other again. Donc, il y a du travail à faire de ce côté-là. Et aussi le personnel scolaire pour qu'il donne les bons conseils aux étudiants. We often hear students go to academic services and they say, I want to drop French immersion. Okay, fill out this form. C'est trop facile. On voudrait qu'ils viennent chez nous, qu'on se parle, qu'on puisse leur donner des conseils. So all of this is leading us to the next step, working within, but also working without. And yesterday, Mary Donaghy, the Assistant Commissioner of Official Languages, and François Boileau both spoke of the gap between high school and university. So the result of our existential crisis, and in speaking with partners across the province and the country, is that we are working for part 2 of our little French immersion party on a symposium on retention in French immersion at the high school level and the transition to the university level. So working with the various teachers associations, parents associations, high leaders in the fields of high school and university programs in French immersion. So that should be in March 2018 in Toronto. Si ça vous intéresse, communiquez avec moi, je mettrai votre nom sur un post-it et on pourra faire un suivi avec vous. Donc voilà, c'est un petit sommaire de l'immersion en français à l'Université d'Ottawa depuis 10 ans. Today, you're going to be hearing a lot about different models, about student experiences, both from people who've studied it and people who've lived it, and also about the teachers' roles or the professors' roles in all of this. So this is just a little bit of a startup for this day's activities. Merci. Bonne journée.
Merci, Marc. Our first plenary speaker this morning is Sonia Soltero. Dr. Soltero is Associate Professor and Chair of the Department of Leadership, Language and Curriculum at DePaul University in Chicago. She received her PhD in Bilingual Education and Literacy from the University of Arizona. Professor Soltero has over 30 years of experience in the field of bilingual and English learner education as a dual language, teacher and coordinator, professional developer, researcher, and university professor. Her teaching expertise covers biliteracy practices in bilingual education, Latinos and education, child rearing across cultures, and reading. She has extensive background in the design and implementation of dual language programs and biliteracy instruction, having collaborated with P-12 school districts across the US and dual language university campuses. She was director of the Bilingual Bicultural Education Graduate Program in the College of Education at DePaul University. At DePaul University, Professor Soltero also co-founded the English Learners Advocacy Council in Higher Education that provides a focused network for higher education faculty and other educators in Illinois who teach about, conduct research on, and/or advocate for English language learner education. Her research interests are bilingual and dual language education, Latino education, and language policy. In addition to articles and book chapters, Professor Soltero has also authored 3 books: Dual Language Education, Program Design and Implementation in 2016, Effective School-Wide Practices for English Language Learners in 2011, and Dual Language, Teaching and Learning in 2 Languages in 2004. Her honors include Excellence in Public Service Award, Excellence in Teaching Award, Native American Studies Outstanding Teacher Award, and Pascua Yaqui, Tribe Excellence in Teaching Award. So please join me in welcoming Professor Soltero, who is going to present the context of learning English and Spanish in the United States. And her talk is entitled Dual Language in Higher Education, a New Way to Conceptualize the Development of Academic and Professional Bilingualism.
Thank you so much. So good. Oh, wonderful. You should do a before and after, right?
I forgot to say that too.
That's excellent. She survived.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So I'm assuming this is the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Start from there.
Is that better? Stand here.
You're taller than me.
All right. Yes. So thank you for inviting me. This is extremely exciting. And Mark, I'm just thinking about everything you said. I have many ideas. This is a challenge. So I'm going to be talking about dual language in higher education, but I think yesterday and also Mark mentioned today the issue with terminology. So we are talking about here, and the title of this symposium is Immersion. In the United States, we've moved from immersion to dual language education. But I think it's mostly the same concept. And I think terminology, particularly in education, continues to change and shift. And so we're always trying to catch up with, Javier also mentioned yesterday about what immersion means in Spain. Right? So something else to mention is that bilingual education in the United States tends to have a stigma. As a negative conception of bilingual education. I grew up in Latin America, and I went to bilingual education, and that had a positive perception because it tended to be private education in bilingual. But today, so my background tends to be, my research and my experience has been in the pre-K-12 system, but I have been working with and researching this university that I briefly talked about yesterday for those of you who were here, that is higher education immersion, but it's really a partial immersion if we want to talk about terminology. So I wanted to start off by sort of setting the stage because it's important, and I think Mark mentioned today and yesterday was mentioned as well, about how do we make a case for immersion or dual language education. And so all the positives, sometimes there's so many competing factors, right? Competing for funds, for money, for time, for prestige. So I was talking to someone yesterday about the competition for programs that have more prestige that are not offered in French. And so they are, I like the way that you framed the risk factors for students. And so how do we make a case for them? In the United States, so you're lucky here. Can I move here? We all, in the United States, we all want to come here. So you're lucky because you have a bilingual official. Bilingualism is officially you have 2 languages as official languages. In the United States, I'm not sure if you are aware, we don't have an official English language, but it is the sort of the de facto official language of the United States. But we do have, as you do here, the states, you have provinces here that have their own language, official languages. And so we have now 32 states out of 51 that have English as their official language. So there is not much of an embrace of bilingualism in the United States, although this is changing slowly. So this is some of the positive trends that have happened in the last 10 years in the United States. There are now whole state initiatives to promote world languages, to promote dual language, to institute that as a statewide effort to increase the number of bilingual and biliterate individuals. So places like Utah, Delaware, Rhode Island, North Carolina, Oregon, Georgia, New York City. I know New York City is not a state. Although they think they are. I think they think they're a country, I think. But New York City, I'm not sure if you're aware, they have over a million students. So it's a very large district, public school district. And I don't know if you're aware, too, that North Carolina and Georgia actually have had legislation, very severe anti-immigration legislation. Yet, they have these initiatives for bilingualism and biliteracy. So the United States is a little bit schizophrenic. Have you noticed? So we have like double think. So I don't know how that works exactly, but yes, that's what we live in the United States with. Also, coursework. Now, this particular coursework tends to be mostly in English, but it is dual language coursework, and there are some degrees on dual language education. Obviously, and I will talk a little bit about later, higher education dual language or immersion is fairly new. It's its infancy in the United States, so you're ahead of the game, even though you say you have a lot of challenges. But we look to you. So San Diego State, California, Texas, Brigham Young in Utah, Roosevelt in Illinois, all of these universities have also realized that there is not only a market, but that this is a good effort to include in the university to offer these coursework or entire degree programs on dual language education and how to do it. So the dual language bilingual university that I'm going to talk to you about today, it is the Ana G. Méndez Sistema Universitario that was founded in Puerto Rico, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Also the Gallaudet University. Who's familiar with Gallaudet? Yes. So Gallaudet is for deaf education, a university, and they have in their vision and mission bilingualism. It's American Sign Language and English. Although we don't tend to think about the deaf world as part of the bilingual world. And University of Texas Rio Grande Valley just announced, I don't know how they're going to do it, but they just announced that they're going to go dual language or immersion in Spanish and English. More research. There's more research to support these efforts about bilingualism and biliteracy. So you've been reading about, I hope, about all the NeuroLinguistic Science research on the benefits of the bilingual brain, bilingualism, and how that benefits cognition and other issues that we're going to talk in a moment about. There's more and more research done on the economic impact of those who are bilingual, but the higher economic impact is those who are biliterate. And there's a big difference between those two, right? Being able to speak and understand is one dimension, but being able to speak, understand, and read and write at a high level, academic and professional level, is quite a different notion. And so in the United States, particularly recent immigrants, because of the stigma, because of the pressures, because of the discrimination, many immigrant families want their children and them as adults to shift, to assimilate to English and to the American culture, whatever that is. I don't know what American culture is, depends where you are in the United States. But there is this notion that they're going to be able to support that bilingualism at home, but biliteracy only happens in school. Only happens over a long period of time. And the ability to read and write at high levels only happens at the university, in high school, and in elementary school. And We know there's more research about academic achievement and the connection and correlation between bilingualism and biliteracy, so the stronger foundations that an individual has in their L1, in their first language, the stronger foundations for that transfer to the second language, and academic achievement. And then linguistic competence. Something shifted here. So bilingual education, there have been slow but sure shifts in attitudes in the United States about bilingual education, perceptions about the positives, and one of those symptoms, I don't know if you call them symptoms, is this passage of the seal of biliteracy that I'll mention in a moment. And there are more lotes. Have you heard of this, lotes? In education, we also like acronyms a lot. No? No? Any guesses? Lotes. So language other than English. So, and the S is not for plural. No, any guesses? United States? United States, the most second spoken. So languages other than English and Spanish. Yes. We love acronyms just to throw people off, keep people guessing. So because Spanish, as I mentioned yesterday, for those who were here yesterday, it's a very spoken by many people in the United States. And so there are lots of dual language immersion programs in Spanish and English, but not so much in the others. But we've seen an increase, and here's some. Are you surprised about Armenian? We have one Armenian dual language elementary school in the United States. Any guesses where? Yeah, Kardashians. Yeah. So Kardashians are Armenians, and so we have it's not LA, it's outside of LA, it's called Glendale. And so in Glendale, there's a huge population of Armenians, and the parents want their kids to have Armenian education. So they have an Armenian dual language program. And some of these others. The Navajo dual language has been around quite a long time. The problem sometimes with the Native American languages is that you don't have certified, licensed, bilingual teachers in native languages. And you mentioned in my introduction, I worked for 7 years on the outskirts of a Yaqui Native American reservation in Arizona. And only 4% of the children spoke Yaqui. So we know that I know in Canada you also have that problem and that challenge to maintain the native languages of the First Nation people. So the seal of biliteracy. Oh, and by the way, of course, French is also increasing in the United States, and Haitian Creole. So it's interesting in Haitian Creole communities, so a lot of Haitian communities, they want French. So it's a little bit of a challenge to get the Haitian Creole community to want to have Haitian Creole and English. They want Haitian Creole, French, and English. So it's an interesting dynamic about having 3 languages as a dual language. So I don't know if you have that issue here, but maybe we can talk when we have time for questions about that. So this is, there's more and more research, so this is just a synopsis of the most important research findings with some of the most well-known dual language researchers, and it is all in K-12. And some of the research is included that I've done in here as well. So this is a compilation of the research findings that correlate to each other. So students in dual language programs have been shown to perform at or above grade level on standardized reading and math tests in English. So even if they are in full immersion, what we call an 90-10 or 80-20 models, which are also called full immersions, they're immersed in the lote. So in Spanish or in Chinese or in French, they actually have shown that they do quite well in the English tests, standardized tests. The students score similar to their statewide peers by about 5th or 7th grade, if not sooner, and that correlates about what we know how long it takes to develop academic language in a second language, 5 to 7 years typically. For some students, it takes less time, and we found also for others it takes more. They achieve at or above grade level in reading and math test measures in the second language. Close achievement gap compared to English-only classrooms by about 5th grade. And this is interesting because in the United States for many years, the majority of the dual language programs are in the elementary primary levels. And so that's still the case, but there's been an increase in offerings, dual language programs in middle school. I don't know, what do you call middle school here? So that's 7th, 8th, is the same thing? Yeah. Junior high, yeah, so people call, yeah. So, and a secondary, high school, you call high school, yes, high school. So secondary offerings as well. And what's really exciting, and we're talking about the pathways, about having the high school students go into the university in dual language or immersion, that the high school students who participate and middle school students who participate in dual are as or more likely to be enrolled in higher level math courses. Isn't that interesting correlation by math courses? As or more likely to pass high school exams, more likely to close the achievement gap by the end of high school, and less likely to drop out of school. Think about for many of the students that are participating in dual language in the United States, because many are Spanish or other languages, these students come from poverty, most of them. So these are not the elite, like what we have in Latin America. You go to a bilingual school, and it's basically private school. These are students who come from disadvantaged homes. So, where in particular Latino students in Spanish have a high school dropout rate, those who are ELs, English learners. So why bilingualism and biliteracy? So again, we talked about how do you convince students, and how do you mitigate all the competing factors for these students to come into immersion and dual language at the higher education level? So what are the benefits and advantages? We know from the research that I just shared with you, and there are other research in Europe and other parts of the world, that there's higher academic performance, more likely to acquire a 3rd or 4th language, better intercultural skills, improved health diagnosis and prognosis. And so I shared yesterday how the health care system is in dire need, at least in the United States, I'm sure here too, and in other parts of the world that have large populations of immigrants that don't speak the language of the country, of their new country. Increased economic competitiveness and higher salaries. So if you're interested, I'm going to show you in a minute. Are you familiar with Patricia Gándara's work? So she wrote a book about, it's called Advantages of Bilingualism, the benefits of bilingualism in the labor market. And so they've done, she's at UCLA, and they've done quite a number of studies regarding the economic benefits and employment opportunities rise when one is bilingual, but even more so when one is biliterate. More employment opportunities, improved national security and diplomacy, delay in certain brain diseases, and increased cognitive advantages, which is the NeuroLinguistic Science in the last 10, 15 years. And here they are, the cognitive benefits of bilingualism. And recently, in the last couple of years, there have been some researchers that have pushed back. Have you been reading anything about this? So they've been pushing back, some scientists have been pushing back about sort of questioning some of these results. But you know what camp I'm on. I'm on this camp. But we have to be ready to sort of counter-argue those criticisms, right? So we know from the research, Ellen Bialystok, are you familiar with her work? So Ellen Bialystok is sort of one of the key researchers, has been around quite a long time. We know that she and others have done research on the benefits for the executive control in the brain, that bilingualism heightens the ability to multitask. Why? Because bilinguals, and how many of you are trilingual? Quadrilingual? And is it quintilingual? I don't know. 5 languages? Yeah, so you're really strong. You have even more benefits. Why are we multitasking all the time? Because we have 2 languages or more in our heads, and they're activated. So we have to suppress one to activate the other. So this is why it's sort of what we call sort of mental workout. Task switching, that's what we're doing. Holding attention longer. because we have these two linguistic or more systems in our brains that we have to handle at all times. Bilinguals also have better working memory, even though if you're my age, not so much, but that's not because of bilingualism, but because of age. Yes, it's a different reason. Brain power. Bilingualism is a mental workout that fine-tunes thinking, resulting in greater mental flexibility. This is one of the ones that the critics are sort of pushing back on some of the research results. Higher metalinguistic awareness. Because we have two or more language systems, so we're not automatically comparing both, but once you start paying attention to the similarities and differences between the two languages that you have, then sort of that creates this metalinguistic awareness and what I call metabilingual awareness. Enhanced creativity in thinking outside the box. Why? Because we have more repertoire of more vocabulary, more ways of expression, ways that are culturally based of expressing something that we cannot express. So I'm sure you have in French things that it just sounds weird in English. So in Spanish we have the same things. And there are things in English that just sound weird in Spanish. And I'm sure French too. So a word like nerd. Do you have a word like nerd in French? I love that word. What is it? Is it the same? Nerd. Nerd is a very interesting word. You're such a nerd. So in Spanish, we don't really, I don't know in Spain, but like in Latin America, so what we decided in Spanish in Latin America is go with nerdo. So people kind of understand that. I don't know, in Spain? No. So in Mexico, they say fresa. Fresa means strawberry. You're fresa, but fresa means something, there's nuance in language, right? Fresa means something else, like you're a bookworm or something, like you're like all tidy, what do you call it, buttoned up. That's not nerd. Nerd is like a really interesting thing. So it's interesting about language that there are nerds in Canada, right? And there are nerds in Latin America and Spain, but so the concept is there, but the word, and this is what happens. So that's why we can think outside the box. And better problem solving, because what are we doing? Those who are bilingual, trilingual, quadrilingual, we're problem solving all the time about the language and how to express and the words that we have to choose, etc. Gray matter. And because it's a mental workout, we have more gray matter, denser gray matter. Now, that doesn't mean that you're more intelligent. No, sorry. But it means that you have a greater capacity for intellect because the brain is a muscle, right? Okay, higher performance. Bilingual students generally outperform and score higher in college entrance exams than monolingual students. So when I present this in the United States, everybody kind of looks at me like not quite convinced, because we know there's a lot of high school dropout students who come from non-English backgrounds. But this is already a self-selected group that has applied to the university. Right? So they're already in that trajectory, and they score better. And then we know about the delay of Alzheimer's and other types of diseases like dementia. Now, it's delay. Don't think, if it's not, you're not going to get it. No, it's just delay. And so the research says 4 to 5 years delay. So you were hoping, no? Okay, so Patricia Gándara, this is from the Civil Rights Project, UCLA Educational Testing Services, found that biliterates, not bilinguals, biliterates, earn more, whereas monolinguals lose $2,000 to $5,000 US dollars annually as a result of losing their home language. Have more social networks, biliterates, and go to college at higher rates, which dramatically, of course, increase income, right, and earnings. Look at the job market. So yesterday, I think somebody mentioned about the service industry, but also government, education, publishing, journalism. So, and I can go on, right? Especially in Canada, that you have such a tradition of bilingualism and embracing languages, but all over the world. So English is not enough. It was enough at one point, but it's just not enough now. So the seal of biliteracy is an official, so I asked yesterday whether you have an official kind of recognition, and I believe that I was told that you do have in the students' transcripts or their diplomas. Yes. where it says biliterate. So you're ahead of the game, of course, and we're just catching up to you. So the Seal of Biliteracy is an official state-sponsored award given by a school, district, or state in recognition of students who have studied and attained proficiency in 2 languages. One of them, of course, has to be English, by high school graduation. So what it is that the student has the right to take some kind of language assessment. Usually the language assessment is related to the foreign language world language programs. I don't know if you have, do you have this? Are you familiar with Apple? The Apple, that's sort of the word ACTFL. You're familiar with ACTFL. So ACTFL uses Apple, at least in Illinois, as the benchmark. And so we've also been discussing about in the states that have passed this biliteracy seal, what is the cutoff to earn the seal? And so they decided to, in Illinois, they decided to do high intermediate, which it doesn't quite equate to B1, right? B1 is a low intermediate? Yeah. So high intermediate, which some people are like, oh, high intermediate is not enough. And so the discussion, this is all very complex. The discussion is, where do we do the cutoff? At full proficiency, then you're going to have very few students be able to attain that seal of biliteracy. So now they're talking about having 2 tiers. So that high intermediate and then full proficiency. So kind of like a gold medal and silver medal, something like that. So I want you to look at this map. And this is, so the first seal of biliteracy was passed in California. Again, schizophrenia, because California got rid of bilingual education in 1998. But California in 2011 passed the seal of biliteracy. So schizophrenia. By the way, one of the positive trends, California in November, there was one good ray of sunlight in November, undid the legislation to ban bilingual education. And now bilingual education is back in California. And California tends to be the first one that we all follow in the United States. So it's a good sign. So look at this. This is 2011 California, 2012 New York, 2014 Illinois, and then all these other states. So if you see the blue is the states that have approved this. This is a legislation, and under construction is the teal, and then the whatever that color is early stages, and then the others are no seal. And look at what happened 3 years later. So I'll show you again. This is 2014, and 26 states. So again, very interesting, because there are 3 states in the United States that passed the legislation to ban bilingual education. The other one was Arizona. So, and Arizona also suffers from schizophrenia, and they passed the seal of biliteracy. And the other state is Massachusetts, up here, Massachusetts, very close to Maine, and they're thinking about it, so they're in the early stages. So this is great for the United States to be recognizing the importance of biliteracy. So let's shift now. This is all sort of the foundation for why we should be doing this. There's research, there's evidence, there's advantages and benefits. And so now I want to talk about this particular program, university system. So I shared yesterday, Sistema Universitario Ana Geméndez, short for SWAGM. And they have the first of its kind dual language partial immersion campuses in the continental US. They are based in Puerto Rico, and they expanded to the United States. And so they have the Spanish-English balanced language distribution of instruction, and so half in Spanish and half in English for all courseworks, for all degrees. And the purpose is for students to use and develop their cultural and linguistic assets and talents. It's a very additive philosophy. And it is for students, so it is sort of the traditional type of degrees, but there is sort of this focus for professionalizing the students. So it's, of course, academic, but they're all in there for a profession, right, to attain some kind of professional either license or degree. So in their vision, they talk about A dual language professional is one who confidently demonstrates professional competencies in their field of study in Spanish and English. And this word confidently is very interesting because it was placed there for legal reasons to a certain degree. Do you have any idea why? Because why wouldn't you just say who demonstrate professional competencies? Because they can, as a university, you can't guarantee that they're going to become fully proficient in the two languages, right? So confidently sort of gives a little bit of a legal out in terms of the level of proficiency. This is, I don't know if you've had this issue. In the United States, everybody loves to sue, and so we're sue happy. So, in this context, it would be very easy for a student to sue. I didn't come out of this university fully bilingual and biliterate, and that's your fault, of course. So a little side story, when I was in elementary school, I remember the first grade teacher and the principal and the district got sued by a parent who the kid was in 5th grade and didn't know how to read. So they sued the first grade teacher because supposedly that's the grade where you learn how to read. So this is the reality in the United States. So Puerto Rico and continental U.S. In Puerto Rico, it is the largest non-for-profit private university and has an enrollment of over 40,000. I believe your university is over 40,000 as well, right? It's accredited by Middle States Commission of Higher Education since 1959, and in 2013 is when they opened their first campus in Florida, in Orlando. And it's called specifically discipline-based dual language immersion model. So discipline-based rather than academic, right? Or content-based. So it's talking about the discipline as sort of the basis for providing the instruction in the two languages. 2006, South Florida campus, which South Florida, this is very close to Miami. Tampa, 2010, and they opened a campus in Maryland, near Washington, D.C., and then recently in Dallas. Look at the student demographics. So when they opened in 2003, 2004, this is this graph over here, the majority of the students were Puerto Rican. And if you know Florida, there's a large population of Puerto Rican community. And I know you don't like community. I don't want to say community. But look at the change in 2016, 2017. So Florida has, people think Cuban, right? But there hasn't been such an influx of Cubans recently. So Puerto Ricans, but now there's a large influx of Central Americans, northern part of Latin America. So it's interesting, I don't know if you can see at the very bottom, there are also students in this Spanish-English dual program, university program, people from Haiti and France and Angola and Virgin Islands, so people that students that are not necessarily Spanish speakers and may not have English as their first language either. So, any questions? Yes?
Yes. It had to do, the previous slide, it's a non-profit private university.
Yes.
So can you give us an idea of the tuition fee? Just general.
Yes.
Is it expensive or cheap?
It's in between. So I don't know if you know, in the United States, things is crazy in the United States. I have to move here. So the public universities, the tuition in public universities has skyrocketed in the last 15, 20 years. So, for example, I'm in a private non-for-profit university at DePaul. It's the largest Catholic university in the United States. And the University of Illinois, Chicago, they charge about half of what we charge, or maybe a little bit more than half, where it used to be, public universities used to charge, 1/5 of what a private university used to charge. So this is in between. They're not expensive like my university, as expensive, but they're not as cheap as a private university. So I'm not quite sure, so I don't want to quote how much. It's in between. It's in between. Yeah. All right. Later for questions. Yes, she's the boss. Yes. Okay, move on. So in the campuses in the United States, in the continental U.S., there are now a little less than 4,000 students right now enrolled. 29 nationalities. 23% of the students are female, which is interesting, which is kind of correlates, not this high, but in the United States, there are, I don't know, close to 55 to 60% of students enrolled in university are female. Look at the average age, it is 38 because this is an adult accelerated, the campuses in the United States are for adult accelerated, even though they have day programs for students who are 18, 19, 20 years old, but they're smaller. They've graduated since 2003, 2,124 students, and I already shared that they have 39 academic programs, including things like nursing, pharmacy, education, business, marketing, accountant, all the things that go along with commerce, the field of commerce. So SWAGM in the continental United States, courses meet once a week for 4 hours. So it's, they also have day program, and these also meet once a week for 4 hours. And they offer classes on Saturday, and they offer classes mostly in the evening, but also in the morning. All the support and academic services are provided in English and in Spanish. Accredited degrees at the associate bachelor's and master's level, offering accelerated dual language Spanish-English, adult higher ed programs. And upon admission, students take a placement test in English and Spanish to determine language proficiency for placement at the appropriate language level. So we're going to talk about assessment in a moment. It's interesting that there is no minimum requirement for minimum requirement in English. There is a GPA. Do you use GPA here too? Yes. So there is a GPA, a minimum requirement, because of course, otherwise they wouldn't be accredited by the accreditation group. But there is no minimum requirement for English. And most of these students have English as their second language. And they're just developing English. And there are multiple language proficiency levels. Most of the students tend to be at the beginner level of English proficiency. So as an external reviewer, I provide sort of the evaluation of the program, and I've been with them, and I also do research for about 8 years. I have recommended on several occasions that they should have a minimum for English. But the rationale for not doing that is that they are open to all students. Right? So, but that creates a bit of a problem. And some of you were talking about how if you have students who come in at 0, students who come in with a little bit more, and with that student, I don't know, what was her name? Adrian. So she was probably at a B1 level, so she had some, right? But you saw the book. That was great. I love that. So it's a little bit of a challenge, and things, you know, as you apply programs, you have to tweak and you have to modify according to the research that you find and the data that provides information for doing that. So it is a diagnostic test in English. This AccuPlacer is a program, assessment program that is bought, but they also developed one for the graduate students. And one of the issues with these placement tests are they tend to be comprehension, reading comprehension, and writing sample, but not so much in speaking and understanding and comprehension. Right? So the graduates don't have the speaking and comprehension, listening comprehension part, but the undergraduates do. So student assessment and program effectiveness, there is quite a bit of student assessment and also program evaluation for placement, but also end of course evaluation. This is the students provide, I'm sure all universities do, the teaching evaluation of the course and the faculty. Student achievement of program objectives within the coursework. And I shared yesterday there's also a midpoint and a capstone. And that is tied to a particular discipline course, where that faculty who teach those particular courses at the midpoint and at the capstone include that evaluation in those courses. And those evaluations are then given to a panel of 3 that I'll talk about in a moment to evaluate using multiple rubrics that they have. And then there's the external program evaluation, that's me, and some other people that sort of provide yearly program evaluation and progress reports and recommendations. So I think that's very important to include so that you know how the program is doing, and to have somebody with fresh eyes from outside to come and evaluate and offer suggestions. So language development across curriculum. There's integration of language objectives in all courses. And of course, for some faculty, this is a little bit tough, right? Because faculty don't see themselves as language instructors. The faculty in the disciplines, they do also have the English language faculty and the Spanish language faculty. So there is a lot of professional development with the discipline faculty for them to see themselves as language instructors as well. So I think I shared yesterday, there are 4 language courses for Spanish language and 4 language courses for English language that students have to take. Now, these students are, especially in the master's levels, like, I know Spanish. You know, I have a bachelor's degree in Spanish, and even at the bachelor's, I have a high school degree in Spanish. Why do I have to take these courses? What do you think is the response? This is university, but I don't know if that's going to cut it for them. So, you know what? They tell the students, what level of sophistication is your Spanish, right? So we have different levels of sophistication. And so that you are the university, even though you're a Spanish speaker, you're going to continue to develop that sophistication in terms of writing, in terms of vocabulary, in terms of, understanding the language at a much higher level. And once they start taking one class, they realize, oh, yeah, I speak Spanish, but I know how to read and write in Spanish, but I can improve, right? So many of you have PhDs in French, and some people have PhDs in Spanish and PhDs in English, because we can continue to develop at that level. So a bachelor's, just because you have a bachelor's in the medium of English doesn't necessarily mean you have that level of proficiency. Language objectives, assessment. Oh, so by the way, in the master's level, they take 2 English classes and 2 Spanish classes, because they can't. You compress the curriculum, you can't take as many courses. So it's a challenge to include all these language courses in there. There are language objectives, assessments as part of student performance evaluation, and this is a challenge too to implement. Where I'm the accountancy professor, and I have to evaluate the students 70% on accountancy content, and 30% I have to evaluate on language. And 15% is English of that 30%, and 15% is in Spanish. So there has to be a lot of support for the faculty to be able to do that, because they're not language experts. They don't know how this works. And faculty, so I was telling you, on intensive professional development, on language development strategies, language development assessment, and how to teach differently for students who don't quite understand. So the case of the student that we saw in the video, it made me think about what could have been done to help that student at the beginning stages. So one thing is to provide maybe some readings in English, right? Maybe some readings in English, so that the student, what was one of the words, hegemony? So hegemony, if you don't know it in English, then it doesn't help, right, to do the Google Translate. So understanding those concepts beforehand, before they read. And that's one of the strategies in bilingual education. The use of both languages in all content courses, but not simultaneously. So Lauren was talking just a bit about translanguaging, and I was talking to him last night about their camps. And the camps are they put the stakes down. And I'm in one camp, sort of, yeah. So in this model, it's very important and very strict language boundaries and separations. So the week that is in English, it's only in English. Now the students are more than welcome to provide responses and answers in Spanish. And the week that is in Spanish, they don't tend to provide answers in English, but it's just Spanish. So, and that's works pretty well. People don't translate. The faculty don't code switch much. Every so often, though, I've been integrating the cross-linguistic connections. So that is the comparison and contrast between English and Spanish that didn't happen before. So when it was English, we just did English, and when it was Spanish, but pointing out cognates, pointing out grammatical, syntactical differences between English and Spanish. So, for example, in Spanish, we put the adjective before the noun. No, the noun and then the adjective, and in English, the other way around. So, perro negro, and in English, black dog. So, you're making those connections and differences, phonological connections and differences. So, the CH in English, why is it k sometimes? And why is it ch sometimes? And the sort of a word like characteristics in English has a CH, and in Espanol, características, it just has a hard C. The soft C and the hard C are sort of similar in English and Spanish. So those are the kinds of things that they're incorporating, even sticking to the language of the week, but making those connections, similarities, and differences. The course materials are provided in both languages. Now, the way that they do that doesn't become extraordinary in terms of the cost for the students is that these are online. The majority of the materials that they read are online texts. So it's cheaper that way. Biliterate faculty and staff, everyone speaks Spanish and English, and everyone is biliterate at a professional level. So all the staff are bilingual, biliterate. All the faculty are bilingual, including those teaching the language courses. So the faculty that teach English, they're also bilingual. So not that they use Spanish, but they can understand the students when they're teaching English. So this is your model from Canada in the 60s, right? Where the other teach. And so we talk about immersion in the United States. It's English immersion is bad. And so we always in the field compare to Canadian immersion. Canadian immersion is good. U.S. English immersion is bad. So one is additive, one is subtractive. Why? Many reasons, but one of them is the Canadian immersion. All teachers are bilingual in English and French. Are they still? Sort of? No, okay. But the English immersion, they're just English-speaking teachers, right? They're not bilingual, and all kinds of other differences. So Canada, we always look to you. Faculty and staff are role models for dual language professionals. So not just for academic, but also as a professional. They provide sheltered environment to support language needs of students. And there's also this cultural diversity management training. And the cultural part comes in not just the U.S. culture. I don't like to call it American, because you're America too, right? The Americas. So whenever possible, I try to not say America. But there's no way to say Americans, right? USans. Somebody said we should call them USans. No. The diversity also comes in, you saw the nationalities, and not all Spanish people are the same, right? So there are quite differences between Colombians and Mexicans and Puerto Ricans and Argentinians. So there has to be also some kind of diversity training, diversity understanding among the staff and the faculty. Faculty professional development. Look at all this stuff. This takes funding. This takes coordination. But this really helps and supports. And the fascinating thing about these campuses is that the faculty, many are part-time, they're adjuncts, but they stay. So there's not a turnover. Even though there's a lot of demand, and this is new to a lot of the discipline faculty, they stay because they like it. They find it very worthwhile and fulfilling. So look at the kinds of things that the instructors need to be well prepared on. Of course, high level of proficiency in their respective discipline, not just be able to read and write. Can I do this presentation in Spanish? Right? So I know a lot of the terminology that I have, because that's what I read and write in, is in English. But then as in my discipline in education, I have to sort of come up to speed with the vocabulary and the terminology in Spanish. Academic background and professional experience in their respective discipline is something that is not necessarily required, but it's preferred. Ability to use the language in real context, both social and professional purposes. So this is not the regular usual academic, we only look at academic language development, but these students also have to develop the social language. So one of the hardest things to do, I don't know if you agree with me, is chit-chatting. Chit-chatting in a language, in your second language, not so easy, right? So you put your foot in your mouth, you say things, people look at you, that's weird. Nobody talks like that. So the social language is particularly important, even in whatever fields they're going into. Comprehension of contemporary media in both languages. Understanding the social, political, historical, and economic realities of the regions, particularly now in the United States. What does it mean to be a bilingual, biliterate? What does it mean for your name to be Ramirez in the United States, and how do you navigate that? And also, how do you navigate that for your children? This is a campuses for adults, but we want to instill in the students, adult students, about their families, about their linguistic heritage of their children, that they shouldn't allow the stigmatization of Spanish or whatever other languages they speak to play a part in their children's development of bilingualism and biliteracy. Understanding how Spanish and English intersect in bilingual communities. How does that come together in bilingual communities? Pedagogical knowledge, of course, about learning theories, second language acquisition, strategies, etc., and knowledge of technology. Technology is a big part, and I'll show you in a minute. This is one of the things that, with the video of the young woman, support systems are incredibly important. Support systems, so the students, you talked about retention. How do we retain these students? The same thing happens with these students. So there's this entire support system, technological, but also face-to-face, and it's called the eLab. And the eLab includes all these things. I don't know if you're probably familiar with Rosetta Stone, which I'm not too crazy about, but they use it. Yeah, you're shaking your head. Net Tutor comes in Spanish and English. Net Library, these are English language books. VoiceThread, there's a lot of use of VoiceThread. So these students get training on how to use these technologies, and they're also incorporated in the faculty courses. And the faculty are asked, they don't always do it, but they're asked to include using this eLab as part of their grade, perhaps. Rosetta Stone, eLibro is sort of the equivalent of the Net Library, but it's in Spanish. And they have over 100,000 holdings of books in Spanish, and a biblioteca virtual as well. So this all supports the students, but some students prefer not to have the technology. They use the technology, but also have the face-to-face. So the challenge with these particular students is they work full-time, and they're older students, so they have families. So when do you provide that? So Saturdays are always open, and sometimes Sundays for the students to come in. Guidelines for program planning and implementation. Are you familiar with the Center for Applied Linguistics? So way back when, a long time ago, I think they need to revise them, they developed these dual language guidelines. And so the dual language guidelines principles, very, very long, but they are geared towards K-12. So what they did at this university is they adapted them to the adult population and to the higher education context. So you have them in you have this slide. I know it's tiny, it's very, very small, but I'm happy to send it to you if you like. And so what we did here is we just modified. So I don't know if you can see here. And this is they're guiding principles for program development and design and maintaining quality programming. So here you see in Strand 1, assessment and accountability. Strand 2 is curriculum. Strand 3, instruction. Strand 4 is staff, facilitator, and administrative quality and professional development. Strand 5 is program structure. Strand 6 is community partnerships. And Strand 7 is support and resources. And you can certainly, if you wanted to look at this and even modify it even further for your particular institutions that are a little bit different than what SWAHM presents to students and the programming, you can certainly do that. But I think it's helpful to have these principles and guidelines for programming. Right? In the next couple of slides, I know it's very small too, but I just wanted to show you, this is something we also developed. We added strand 8. And these are dual language competencies. And they are separated by language competence, dual language competence for administrators, for staff, for faculty, and for students. And if you see on the left-hand corner, the left sheet there, you see these are knowledge competencies, what administrators should know. And on the other column, which is it's a sheet back and forth, are professional practice competencies, the application part. One is knowledge, one is application. The next is the same. This one is for faculty, facilitators. One is the knowledge competencies, these are the things that they're supposed to know, and this is the other is the practice or the application. So participate, you see the kind of language, participate, create, model, follow, action words, right? The next one is for staff, practice and knowledge, and the next one is for students. And I don't know why the page that has the application is not on there, but so just, I know it's very tiny, but I can send this to you as well. So what are the challenges for higher education in the United States that may be similar to the ones that you may have here? Very few, and I don't know about here, you offer more than us, but very few bilingual courses. Forget programs, very few bilingual courses and programs beyond world language offered at the university level. The difficulty for English learners, P20, facing increasing academic and linguistic demands in English that also push them, the same with you, to just go to English. You know, I don't have the time or the money to be taking courses in 2 languages. Native English speakers are hindered by limited time and access to become biliterate. So they're trying to, at this university, to attract English speakers. So imagine that would be the 2-way model. Right now it's kind of a 1-way model. So how do we attract them? And we have to attract those kind of English native speakers or monolingual speakers, hopefully not monolingual, that have had Spanish in high school and elementary. Difficulty in making changes to existing higher education curriculum. So in my own university, trying to change the curriculum, is it like that here? Oh my God. It's like you think you are just like, it's just really difficult. It just takes a year long to change anything in the curriculum. 1,000 people have to agree, 1,000 people have to discuss it till the death. So it's difficult. How do you move things around to make room? And maybe that's something to consider. Instead of adding more credit hours, how do we consolidate some credit hours and some courses so that you can make room for more courses in French? Increasing demand for biliterate workers across professions is not adequately addressed by current world language programs. And so I don't know here, but in the United States, world language in high school is maybe, 45 minutes 3 times a week. That's not going to make you proficient. Limited access to higher ed faculty who are fully biliterate. At my university, in the late 90s, we did do a bilingual program. And it was funded by a grant. The grant ran out, and the university didn't pick it up. And the way that it was done was quite different from this one. The way that it was done, it was they identified faculty that were already there who were Spanish speakers. So my husband teaches sociology. He's from Mexico. He taught his sociology class in Spanish. We have a colleague from Cuba, and he taught history. He's a historian. He taught that history course in Spanish. So that's the way that we tapped into the linguistic capital that was already there. They didn't require to hire any other additional faculty. So the coordination is what took money. Right? The coordination, making sure that the students were taking the courses in appropriate ways, identifying course texts and materials. So that's the type of thing that takes funding to do this. So identifying course materials in the 2 languages and articulating between institutions. It's already been talked about between high school and higher education institutions. Opportunities, it's not all bad. How do we cross-pollinate through curricular partnerships between foreign language departments and other academic units? So in the United States, in my institution, we call modern language departments. Is that what they're called here too? So how do we don't talk to each other. In academia, we like silos. Nobody talks to each other. Why not? Cross-pollinate. Create pathways for biliterate students, pipeline, pre-K through 12th grade, and then into P16, P20. Targeted recruitment and hiring of bilingual, biliterate faculty. So as faculty leave or retire or move, having the university have a plan, a strategic plan to hire more bilingual, biliterate faculty in those disciplines that are necessary. Faculty exchange partnerships with target language countries. Why not? Incorporate cross-national programming via digital medium so that you could have, teleconferencing and have sort of people from other parts of the world that speak the target language. Partner with local agencies that serve multilingual communities for service learning and multilingual internships of field work. So that's one of the things with the SWACM University where they do the internships, nursing. They have to do internships in hospitals and clinics, etc., and education as well. They have to do student teaching. And so all these things, so targeting those areas and those organizations and businesses that have the two languages. And international student internship and exchanges as well. So expanding just beyond the classroom. Finally, these are my two books. So this is the book on dual language. Unfortunately, these are specifically targeted to K-12. There's a little bit of discussion about beyond K-12, but these are for K-12 education. Maybe we can all collaborate and create a book for the higher education programming and design. And my other book is about English language learners in the United States in general, program design. So we have about 10 minutes, 5 minutes. For questions. Yes.
The SWACM initiative was fascinating. But I'm a little sort of overwhelmed by how does it work? I mean, it seems you have a very complex number of campuses. You have a number of kinds of Spanish to deal with, even some other languages. And you're speaking about 4 hours a week. Now, is it 4 hours a week per course?
Per course.
So someone could take 4 or 5 courses?
Yes, but they typically don't.
People who are just taking one and they're working full time.
Yes. So most of them. So they don't have semesters. They have sort of shorter quarters. So some of the courses are 8 weeks. Some of the courses are 5 weeks. So it's intense for students. So they typically the 5-week courses they don't take 2. The 8-week courses they do take 2.
But they would be working on them with the teacher only 4 hours a week, and of course they have their homework to do.
Yes. Right.
These are mostly working people, though, older working people who are trying to add a qualification.
So it's very challenging because they're older, and because most of them don't speak English fully, and they're working and they have families. So it's very challenging to do an accelerated program, which is the adult education sort of model, and add to that learning a second language.
It's very challenging for them, but I'm just thinking organizationally.
Organizationally, yes, you do need people, and that's what takes money, right? So you do need several people to do different parts of the program design and implementation. There is an academic director, and the academic director does the hiring and also the support. They've instituted a mentorship program with more senior faculty that have been there a long time, so to provide that support for the younger, or not the younger, but the newer faculty, and particularly for the discipline faculty. So,
Where people sit and where you go physically for the class.
yes.
But this computer literacy seems to be essential.
Yes.
You have to teach that first.
Yes, and it's very difficult. Some of these students don't know how to turn, very few, but they don't know how to turn a computer on. So you have to provide lots of support services, right? And some of this, even me, it's a little overwhelming, all this technology. But they have talked about online, and most people push back to offer online. Because that would be easy, right? You stay at home. So in my own university, everybody wants online. Then you give them online, and the students are like, I don't think we like it all that much, right? So that's a good thing, I think. I like online. Yes.
It's also a lesson that people want to face-to-face.
Yes. And for language, you must have face-to-face, yes. Other questions? Yes?
So, as I mentioned with the Center for English Language Learning, Teaching, and Research, one of our mandates is this professional learning, professional development for not only faculty, but for TAs,
Yes.
particularly international
Yes.
TAs and staff. So I'd like to know a little bit more about how you provide incentives
Yeah.
or motivation, because we are not technically a dual language. You know, in some programs,
Right.
60% of the students are learning, it's a submersion model essentially, are learning in the discipline in their second language.
Right.
So, you know, we're offering these workshops.
Nobody comes, yeah.
Well, not nobody, but there could be more uptake.
Yes, so that's a challenge to do that. A lot of the discipline faculty, surprisingly enough, they're hungry. They don't know what to do. So they're hungry, they come. After a while, they stop coming. So incentivizing the faculty with certificates, sometimes with, you know, a little bit of money, some kind of, I don't know, monetary reward or something like that. Originally, what they had is 3 tiers of professional development, and you move from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3. They haven't really implemented tier 3 because it's a little bit much. And most of these faculty, full-time faculty, have other things to do, and the part-time faculty have full-time jobs. So it's a challenge to get them in. I think once they see the benefits, that it's going to make their life easier in the classroom, then they come. One of the things they did shift is to provide more online. So they put like more webinars, you know, more online, these kind of things, so that they don't have to come physically to the campus. But it's a challenge to do that. I think the word spreads. I think, where's that, word of mouth? Word of mouth spreads, and this is going to make your life easier in the classroom, and then they come. But it is a challenge. Yeah. Yes?
Is there a push in the U.S. for you talked about these immersion programs, and with Spanish in particular, for Spanish unilingual education or unilingual?
No, that's interesting. Oh, that would be, oh, no. That's radical. No. No.
Because it's a question.
So, yeah.
It's a tension, if I can use that word.
Yeah.
In Canada.
Full immersion, truly.
Yeah, and because it's a question of responding to the wants and needs of Anglophones or Allophones wanting to learn French, and then Francophones wanting to
Right.
learn and live in a French language setting. And so that's
Yes. No, actually, you're interested. It's interesting you bring that up because the university has had, because of the political context, the government has contacted them about, you know, they want to see evidence that this bilingual at the higher education level works, because they're concerned that half of the curriculum is being done in a language other than English. And this is the politics, right? So that would probably not be, yeah, I know. But also because we're so close to Latin America, I think if people wanted to do that, they'd probably do, you know, Fulbrights, or they would go up, you know, not far away from where we are to do that. I think it might be a little bit different in the French context, the French language context.
Can I ask as a follow-up to that, have there been any studies of Spanish-speaking students who've gone to these other K-12 or post-secondary institutions, and the rates of language transmission when they have their own kids? Is there a correlation there, or
I don't know of any such. I think there's a couple of case studies like that, but that's a very interesting. So what we do know anecdotally is that those who have gone to dual language and have their own children, they want their children to go to dual language schools as well. But I don't know if that's been done, you know, sort of like large-scale research study. But anecdotally and case studies, I've seen those, yes. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have one.
Yes, okay.
You mentioned faculty professional development.
Yes.
And you
said that teachers, even if they're part-time,
Yes.
they come to the workshops and
Yes.
how do you do that?
I think it's part of the culture. And it's part of the culture that started from the onset in 2000. So for you, if you don't begin with that part of the culture, you have to build that culture, right? So you have to build the culture, and I think word of mouth. If you provide professional developments that are really beneficial, that are applicable, that the faculty can go and apply the next week, then that starts to get spreads around. And faculty is 4 hours of teaching. I teach 3.5, and I teach in the evening as well. That's a long time to keep students interested and engaged, and So I'm looking for strategies. I'm looking for somebody to help me with evaluation, all those things. So I think it's creating sort of a cadre of really good faculty that are enthusiastic, and they will tell the others. And so you have to create really engaging professional development for them. Maybe feed them too. I don't know. That always works. Yes.
Sorry, we found that when the professional learning workshop is discipline specific, contextualized,
Yes.
they'll
Yeah.
come. If it's
Yeah.
something just generic,
Yeah.
faculty don't.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so we try to create some in-house workshops. So we'll
Yeah.
parachute into the BD,
Right.
School of Business Professional Learning
Yeah.
Day, and then we'll incorporate. And all the examples are
Yeah.
discipline specific.
And one way to do that, to hook them, is to do a short, 7-8 minute video of that professional development that is really engaging and fun, and say, come back for more on Saturday, whatever, and we will expand on this. So we've also done that, create short videos, tutorials. And they have to be short, because otherwise people don't. So 6, 7, 8 minutes tops of particular strategies that the faculty can use to support students. Comprehensible input. Yes. Anybody else?
Time for one more question.
Sorry.
Yes.
But sort of just further to that, is the challenge in attracting faculty to these
Yes.
these kinds of workshops and initiatives? Is it partly a reflection of the reality of that half the faculty are part-time now, right? That is our relationship with that challenge. I mean, people who are more transient in and out of their teaching, and who, as part-timers, have other engagements or have other commitments where they're trying to get an income.
Yeah.
Doing other things.
What we found is that part-timers actually sometimes are more dedicated than full-timers. Have you seen? Because they're there because they want to be. They don't have to. They have full-time jobs. They want to teach, right? So I think part-timers are the ones that are more interested in finding, ways of how to make their lives better, easier at, teaching and instruction. So I think the part-timers seem to be the ones that just want to be here, unless they're sort of the professional part-timers that have a part-time job in this university and that university, and that's really difficult, right? But many of those part-timers sometimes want to become full-time. And so another thing to sell the professional development is, if you offer it for free, is to remind people, look, this is a very expensive professional development. Typically, people pay, whatever amount of money, and we're offering it to you for free. So it's for your own professional development. You can put it in your CVs. So sort of, you have to do a little marketing, try to sell it to them, because it is beneficial in multiple ways. I don't have all the answers. Some answers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to take a short break. We have a 15-minute break before the individual papers. There's coffee and munchies just outside in the hall. Also, a quick reminder: there is in your registration kits or bags an evaluation sheet for the symposium. So we still haven't figured out where we're going to collect them, but but if you can take a few moments to fill them out, and we'll figure out where to ask you to bring them. But yeah, well, take some time. So we'll take a short break and be back à 10h15 pour les communications individuelles. Merci.